Good morning and welcome to Hay Hut Part 2. Keisha and I have deciphered a whole bunch of things and we came up with a solution. We are not going to close it all the way around on the back or the sides. We want air to flow through there. And I also nixed putting the plywood on the floor. We have a ton of extra building material left over from when we built the pole barn 2 years ago. So I had a bunch of twisted up 2x4s that will work perfect. So I'm cutting them in between there. You can see I'm over 200 pounds, so it's nice and solid. I'm gonna make my own wooden floor. And then up on the top, we're gonna use some of the twisted lumber that's left over from the barn. And I'm gonna run my runners that way and then put some of the purlings going across. We can only come up with 8-foot material. No one had 10-footers in stock in the area. So we're gonna go with it, try it, and then down the shop, I found some, I believe it's 16s flat steel, and I bent some brackets. I'm gonna weld these up on here on all 4 corners after I weld up the unit, and then that way it's gonna be one removable. So if we ever do decide to close the back end, I'll be able to take the screws out, slide everything forward so it's not a total loss. So stick around and see what we can come up with today. Just a tip when you're welding, I know enough about welding to be dangerous. I took a class a long time ago, but I don't do it often, so it's always a new learning experience for me every time I go and need to weld something. But your biggest thing is always have a fire extinguisher around. You're clearly dealing with things that are really hot and gonna catch things on fire. And 2 is make sure you have no explosives around, gas or anything. So something to think about. Supposed to have a slagging tool, so like a little pick. I have one down the shop, I forgot it. So since we're just doing this for a hay hut, it's not real critical. But you can see, you got to try to figure out deciphering the temperature of the weld versus the thickness of the metal. So I'm still trying to figure that out. But you try to like just walk it back and forth with like a little swellow. So you want to get heat into both metals so they melt together. But other than that, I'm just an amateur. So, these are just tips that I've learned over time. I wouldn't take them as anything moving forward, welding anything structural. Okay, now we got the welding done. I'm glad that's over with. It's fun to dabble with welding for me, but I do it long enough to remember why I'm glad I don't do it for a living. It's hard work, very tedious. It's pretty much like artwork. So, like I said, I'm just an amateur at it, but the going rate for a welder around this area is like $125 to $140 an hour. So I'll deal with my messy welds. See, these are about I'd say a little bit less than a 1/4 inch screw, so they're pretty heavy duty screw in case we get like a nice wind here. You can see, and it's got the big Phillips head bit. And then whenever we run the stringers across, I will use just regular deck screws. Now we're gonna cut some 8-footers and 10-footers out of my old scrap 2x4s. They used them for supporting the trusses. They're actually 20-foot long 2x4s. That's a rarity. You don't see that too often in like a Lowe's or Home Depot. So the longer the lumber gets, the more it twists up over time. So we're gonna do the best we can with what we have. Okay, we got some 8 and 10-footers cut. 8-foot this way, 10-foot this way. And if you paid attention to whenever I was building this metal frame, I had this little nub stuck up. We ended up putting some pitch on this roof, so on a light drizzle day, the water will run to the backs of the Jasper and Jack on the front and not get dripped on. We originally talked about going flat, but figured I'd use this to my advantage. So that piece of metal that's sticking up, I didn't cut it off. I used it as a benchmark, so it takes some of the measuring out of the way. So I slid this 10-footer back to where it hits that metal piece on the back, and that's my starting point. So I split the difference this way and that way. We have about 27 inches hanging over on each end, and then now we have 9 inches hanging over on each end here. Just double check. So use all these steel posts as benchmarks. So that's how to try to get center. I mean, it's not gonna be perfect, but so now what I'll do is, this will be my starting point for my purlings for the roof. Never hurts to double check your measurement, but this should be 9 inches. So it's 9 inches there going off this post over to the edge there. Might be a little bit heavy, but it's good enough. Then pull this tight back to that metal frame of the shelving. I'm choosing to screw all this together in case I want to ever take it apart. If you nail it, it's almost impossible to get it apart. So now I'll put one here on the very end to catch the roofing. Have a little bit of an overhang, and then I'll go up every 2 feet all the way to the top, split the difference. So it supports, we ended up going with a tinted plastic roof, you know, the PVC clear kind. So it will be like a shade shelter as well in the summertime. We had some technical difficulties. I said I was trying to use up the wood that I had left over from the barn, but some of it was twisted up so bad like a pretzel. I'm like finding myself cutting straight wood out of some of the longer stuff. So if you remember earlier in the video, we talked about making these 8 foot long. The more and more I think about it, the roofing panels are 8 foot long. So I went back and I cut 1.5 inches off of these so I could have a little bit of an overhang. Whether I put like a piece of metal fascia, or I thought about possibly putting a gutter on the back side, since I put a little bit of a slant to it, and then a gutter, and then catching water into a water trough to minimize us dragging hoses around and stuff in the wintertime. So still trying to make do with this twisted up lumber here, but I'm spanning it pretty much 24 inch center, coming across, and then I'm going to try to hit similar going up. Like I said, it's a hay hut. It's not anything permanent structure or anything like that. But, you know, so far, my total investment, I got $160 tied up into this. And that's pretty much just the roofing. Everything else I had laying around, it's already been bought and paid for with other projects. So we're going to keep moving along here. Okay, we got everything screwed up, and now we're gonna throw some sheeting up on the roof here and see how out of square this is. I could see just from the eye, it looks out of square, but I'm not getting real crazy because it's a hay hut. But so far, everything's been coming together. I may put some cross member supports in there. Right now it's good, but if we get like a big snow, like maybe 2 feet, I'm worried that it might do one of these, collapse over. Let me know what you think. You know, all the corners are welded pretty strong and everything seems to be pretty sturdy, but I don't know, I always think worst case scenario. So it's unbelievable what this roofing stuff costs. This was the cheapest option. If I went with metal, it was almost $50 for one piece here in this area. I could have ordered in some stuff. It was $30 from a different manufacturer, but I'm running out of time and just trying to get this done. So if this works out, I may switch at a later date or just keep going with it. I mean, hate to see all the wood and stuff, but if this is a permanent thing, we'll paint it. Well, that's as square as I'm gonna get it. I knew I was gonna run into this problem because when you work off something like foundations, you have to start square and work your way up square. Well, I knew that shelving was bent up. It's not the right post. I didn't really square it up whenever I welded it, so I tweaked things around using that twisted lumber. It's close enough for a hay hut. So I'm gonna start running some screws down there with some rubber washers, and then I'll get that secured, and then we'll run in that 2x4 flooring. Ended up working out to be 39 1/4. You could see, I don't know if you could see this wood so twisted up. Next move for it was in a burn pile, so try to use it up for here. Well, guys, that's a wrap. She's not pretty, but she's gonna work. This is hopefully gonna save us a lot of money moving forward, going to round bales versus square bales. And something I didn't mention before is not only saving in money, but work, because you're constantly taking square bales out, putting them in nets, hanging them. So I'm hoping that we're gonna get a couple weeks out of a round bale versus going out every other day with a square bale. That's the plan. So, you know, this is what I did with stuff we had laying around the barn. So I had $160 tied up into this. So, you know, if I had to go buy one, be $1,000 to $1,500. So I'm okay with it not looking completely perfect. You know, we'll paint it, make it look as good as possible. But the next time you're going to see this thing, it's going to be in a test run out in the field. So, like always, take care, and we'll see you in the next one.